Okay, so let us now resume for discussion, and this time, bago tayo pala mag-proceed sa PowerPoint presentation, yan, let us have an overview muna doon sa mga topics na ating i-discuss. So since we are already done with the preliminaries and the midterms, of course, sa midterms, if you can still remember, we have discussed Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. For Chapter 3, we have there the different cognitive learning theories. So there are 4, Piaget's, Levygotsky's, together with George Miller's, and problem solving and creativity. Right now, we also have for Chapter 4, the behavioral learning theories, Ivan Pavlov's, classical conditioning, Thorndike's, Skinner's, and the neo-behaviorism, we have 2. Meron tayong latent or purposive learning theory. Then we also have the social learning theory. Diba? Yung, more on observation. So, since we are done with those topics, ngayon naman, ang focus na natin, of course, is for the semifinals. And meron pa rin siyang dalawa na chapter. We have Chapter 5, the Constructivist Learning Theories. Actually, there are 4. We have here the Constructivist Theory, Gesto Theory, the Subsumption Theory, and the Cooperative and Experiential Learning. And for Chapter 6, we have here the Psychosocial, Psychosexual, and Humanist Theories of Learning. So, meron tayo ditong tatlo. And I believe that these learning theories are already familiar with you since these learning theories are already discussed in your Prof. Ed 1, the Child and Adolescent Development. Right? So, let's start. Okay, so first, let us discuss Chapter 5, which is the Constructivist Learning Theories. And let us first have an overview on what is constructivism. Okay, so when we say constructivism, it lies on the premise that learning is an active process. It is an active process. So, kung doon tayo sa cognitive learning theory, more likely, ang focus niya is on the mental process. Right? So, kung paano na-develop ang ating cognition. Then, meron din tayong behavioral learning theories. More likely on the SR, or the stimulus and response. So, dito naman sa constructivism, learning is an active process. Why? Bakit siya sinabing learning is an active process? So, since learners construct new ideas or concepts based upon their current or past knowledge. Ibig sabihin, si learner, mas natututo daw siya kapag yung new ideas or concepts ay connected doon sa kanyang background knowledge or prior knowledge natin tinatawag or previous knowledge and kung ano pa man yung iba natin pagkatawag doon. Okay, so learning is an active process. Bakit natin nasabing ganon? It is because yung panibagong natututunan niyang knowledge and informations, ideas, and concepts should be connected on the previously known informations para mas maging meaningful ang kanyang learning. So, cognitive structure provides meaning and organization to experiences and allows the individual to go beyond the information given. Okay? Kasi nga, nababase niya sa kanyang personal experience at yung sa kanyang background knowledge or prior knowledge. The instructor and student should engage in an active dialogue. The task of the instructor is to translate information to be learned into a format appropriate to the learner's current state of understanding. Okay? Then, curriculum should be organized in a spiral manner. Bakit spiral manner? Say, for example, in the K-12 curriculum, di ba sinasabi natin that the K-12 curriculum, siya ay in spiral progression. So, nakakita na ba kayo ng spiral? Di ba? Katulad lang sa notebook, yung parang spring niya, di ba? From very bottom, sa pinaka-very bottom, paakyat, ganon. Okay? Ano ba yung kapag sinabi natin spiral? Okay? So, from the very basic, pinakamababang form ng knowledge, patuloy, continuous, pero habang nagpapatuloy, mas tumataas yung level, pero connected pa rin yung matataas na knowledge and information doon sa kanyang basic na knowledge na natutunan, nakuha. Then, so that the students continually builds upon what they have already learned. Have you experienced in a classroom na kapag ka merong panibagong topic na pinipresent sa atin, then wala tayong idea kung ano yun or kung tungkol saan yun. So more likely, we find it challenging to learn the new idea since wala tayong background information or prior knowledge regarding the topic. Pero, kapag meron tayong background or prior knowledge regarding the new topic, mas nagiging meaningful sa atin yung pagkatuto at mas nagiging madali for us to absorb the new information since we already have a prior knowledge regarding that. Okay? So, let us now go to the first subtopic of constructivism or constructive learning theories, which is a constructivist theory. Now, Jerome Bruner believes that learning is an active process. So, kapag sinabi natin kasi constructivist theory, more likely yung primary na tao na pwede nating ma-connect to this one is Jerome Bruner. Okay, so he was concerned with how knowledge is presented and organized through different modes of thinking. So, syempre, paano natin siyang gagawin in spiral progression if the contents and the knowledge is not presented in an organized manner, right? So, Bruner's constructivist theory suggests it is effective when faced with new material to follow a progression from inactive to iconic to symbolic representation. Actually, these concepts here will be discussed, okay, in this topic. Then, Bruner's work also suggests that learner, even of a very young age, is capable of learning any material so long as the instruction is organized appropriately. So, tayo daw as individuals, kaya doon nating matuto kahit sa pinakamurang edad pa natin as long as organized at nasa appropriate manner yung knowledge or yung materials na gagamitin. Nakuha? So, constructivist theory, more likely, siya ay founded, it is an active learning wherein para matutunan natin yung new or yung panibago na idea, concept, and information knowledge, kailangan ito ay connected, ito ay related sa ating prior knowledge o dun sa tinatawag nating background knowledge. So that is constructivism. If just in case that you'll be able to encounter the word constructivism, yung pwede natin i-incorporate or i-equate natin the word for that one, for constructivism or constructivist is prior knowledge. Why? Learning becomes meaningful when the new information is related to our prior knowledge. So, take note of that one. Kasi sa mga susunod niyo mga prof-ed, ma-encounter nyo pa rin siya. Okay? So, we have here 3 modes of representation according to Jerome Bruner. So, first is the enactive representation or the action-based. No, second one is the iconic representation, image-based, and we have here symbolic representation, which is language-based. So, ito daw, sabi pa nga dito, di ba? Bruner's constructivist theory suggests it is more effective when yung ating new material nagfa-follow siya o yung ating pagkaka-organize ng ating mga materials na ituturo or even yung matututunan natin ay yung knowledge dapat daw ay naka-arrange into, we have here enactive. First is action-based. Kailangan daw na-experience muna natin with the use of our senses. Iconic representation, medyo higher na to from very concrete na knowledge, very concrete o yung mga nakikita, it could be touched, could be seen, heard, smelled, no? To image na lang siya. So, medyo nababawas na yung senses. So, yun yung tinatawag natin iconic. Until sa very abstract, no, na representation, which is symbolic or more likely on language. And as you can observe, no, from elementary until to the present, Nung elementary kayo, kapag si teacher nagtuturo ng panibagong topic, talagang nagpo-provide siya ng real objects. Right? It could be of mga stuffed toys, candy, or anything that could be brought inside the classroom. Right? Pwedeng i-touch. So, yun yung mode of representation sa elementary students, pupils. Why? Kasi yung mga elementary pupils natin, hindi pa nila kaya mag-isip abstractly. If you can still remember, di ba, yung kay Jean Piaget na stages of cognitive development, remember na sa very first na stages, sensory, motor, preparational, sabi doon, students or individuals or children think symbolically, no? More likely, hindi pa nila kaya mag-isip abstractly. So, kailangan nakikita muna nila na experience, concrete, right? So, pagdating naman ng high school, syempre, yung approach ng teachers, hindi na siya yung gaya ng sa elementary na nagpa-provide talaga ng real objects. But rather, medyo nalalesser na or medyo naging higher na yung mode of representation. So, pwede na lang mag-provide si teacher ng pictures, right? Mag-provide si teacher ng picture ng insects or ng mga objects and a lot more. Then, pagdating niyo ng college, that's why, kung mapapansin niyo sa college, hindi na tayo ganoon kagumagamit ng mga instructional materials. What kind of instructional materials na lang yung mapapansin niyo pagdating niyo ng college? Usually, we are using yung board, right? Wherein si teacher, sulat sa board. Huwag kayong magtaka doon, okay? Kasi college students na kayo, it only means that you can already think abstractly. Nandoon na tayo sa symbolic representation, language-based. So, kung hindi man to si teacher nag-write sa board, Manila paper. Kaya kung mapapansin nyo, more on sulat. Or sometimes, si teacher hindi na gumagamit talaga ng mga instructional materials, but rather gumagamit na lang ng verbal. Nag-relay na lang siya ng information and knowledge through oral na delivery. Right? Pero syempre, much better pa rin kung meron tayong instructional materials na ginagamit. Nga lang, pagdating ng college, medyo higher na kasi yung mode of representation na ginagamit ni teacher. Why? Kasi yung mga nasa stage ng college, we believe na ito ay nandoon na sa abstract thinking na siya. So, kaya na natin mag-isip abstractly. Nakuha? So, here, sa first mode of representation, we have here the inactive. Inactive, when we say inactive, again, do not be confused. When we say inactive mode of representation, it is the action-based. Okay? More likely, experiential. Mas maraming senses yung ginagamit. Kapag sinabi nating inactive, talagang siya ay learning by doing. Nakuha? When we say inactive representation, it is from 0 to 1 year old. Now, the first kind of memory is the memory of our experiences. Nakuha? Thinking is based entirely on physical actions, and infants learn by doing. Okay? Rather than by internal representation or thinking. Kasi nga, yung mga bata, nagsisimula talaga sila always sa kanilang experience. Say for example, an infant or a child. Bago niya matutunan na mainit itong bagay na to, kailangan i-touch niya muna yun at mapaso siya or parang ma-feel niya na mainit, tsaka niya masasabing mainit. Right? Unlike us, kapag makita lang natin yung cup of coffee na medyo may usok-usok ng onte, di ba? So, alam natin na siya ay mainit through just simply looking at it. Pero yung bata, kailangan ma-experience niya muna. Learning by doing. So, it involves encoding physical action, no? Bakit merong sinasabing physical action? Kasi nga, when we say inactive representation, more likely, more senses are involved in learning. Nakuha? Information and store it in our memory. Many adults can perform a variety of motor tasks that they would find difficult to describe in iconic or symbolic. So when we say enactive representation, it is the very first mode of representation. And sinabi pa nga natin, dapat sa enactive representation, ito kasi nasa pinakababa, foundation, nandito ito, no? So kailangan, we learn muna through our experiences. We learn by doing. We learn through the use of our senses. Okay? Bago tayo pumunta doon sa higher na level, kailangan concrete experiences muna bago tayo pumunta doon sa pinaka-abstract. Nakuha? Okay, then we also have here iconic representation from years 1 to 6. So when we say iconic, remember, it is image-based. So kanina, kung yung enactive representation, more likely of, ano yun? Action-based. More senses are involved. More likely experiential. We learn by doing. Then, iconic naman, iconic representation, it is image-based. Okay? Ibig sabihin, yung sa image, ano na sense na lang yung ginagamit natin? It is our sight, of course, image. And according to research, of course, that among all the senses that we are using, 70% yung napupunta sa ating sight. Ibig sabihin, mas madali nating nare-retain yung mga bagay or yung mga nakikita natin. Okay? Mas madali nating na-memorize, mas madali nating naiintindihan with the use of our sight. Why? 70% kasi among all the senses, ito yung nagwo-work talaga, our sight. Okay? Kaya nandito siya sa second to the highest na mode of representation, papunta doon sa abstract. Okay? So, information is stored as sensory images or icons. When we say iconic, icons, images. Nakuha? Usually, virtual ones like pictures in the mind. This may explain why when we are learning a new subject, it is often helpful to have diagrams or illustrations to accompany the verbal information. So, pagdating ng high school, si teacher more likely nagpe-present na lang ng pictures. Habang siya ay nagdi-discuss, much better kung si teacher ay nagpe-present ng pictures. Nakuha? So, that is iconic representation. Thinking is also based on the use of other mental images or icons such as hearing, smell, or touch. Pero more likely, we are using our sight. So, iconic representation, more on images, we learn through what is seen by our eyes. Nakuha? So, medyo nagtitika abstract na siya. And lastly, we have here symbolic representation from ages 7 onwards. So, when we say symbolic representation, sabi ito ay language-based na lang. Okay, so more likely, we learn through hearing. This is where information is stored in the form of a code or a symbol such as language. That is why, sa isang grade 1 pupil, hindi ka pwedeng magpabasa sa kanya ng isang libro na purely text lang. Nakuha? Kaya nga pagdating ng college, yung mga libro natin, what can you observe sa mga libro sa college? More on texts na lang. Why? Kasi nga, it is the most abstract, pinaka-abstract na siya, yung mga texts and the language. Knowledge is stored primarily in words, mathematical symbols, or in other symbol systems such as music. Nakuha? So that is symbolic representation. Siya yung pinaka-highest, abstract na siya, through words na lang, kaya nga tayo ay mahilig na magbasa ng mga dyaryo, right? Unlike nung elementary tayo, when we have books, hindi naman talaga yung words yung binabasa natin, but rather, ang ginagamit natin or tinitignan natin ay yung mga pictures. Pero pagdating ng college, minsan yung mga books natin wala ng pictures, diba? So, more likely on text na lang or words and languages. Okay, mathematical symbols. So, that is symbolic representation. So, again, we have 3 modes of representation. First is the enactive representation. Second is the iconic representation. Symbolic representation. When we say enactive, it is action-based, more on experiential. We learn by doing. Then we also have iconic representation or the image-based. More likely, we'll learn through pictures. And lastly, symbolic representation. It is language-based. So, words, mathematical symbols, text, yun. Clear? Okay, so Bruner emphasized 4 major aspects to be addressed during the teaching and learning process under Constructivist Theory. Okay, so first is the predisposition toward learning. How a body of knowledge can be structured so that it can be most readily grasped by the learners. The second, the third, the most effective sequence in which to present material. And the last one is the nature and pacing of rewards and punishment. So first, predisposition towards learning. The child's readiness to learn is an important aspect to consider in learning concepts and skills. So predisposition, it means the readiness toward learning. So one of the factors that can contribute to this is the parent and the teacher influences on a child. When both parents and teachers provide enjoyable opportunities for exploration and play, the child can discover concepts in interesting ways. So more likely, di ba, ito nga yung sabi natin, major aspects to address during teaching and learning process. So first, we need to prepare our students to learn. So predisposition toward learning, of course, kailangan natin i-consider that the child is already willing. The child is ready to learn. Okay, kaya nga dapat to encourage students to learn, nagpapasok tayo doon ng play or any enjoyable activities that will make the learners realize that learning is fun. So that is predisposition toward learning. Second, how a body of knowledge can be structured so that it can be most readily grasped by the learner. Okay, so how a body of knowledge can be structured, arrangement, so that it can be most readily grasped by the learner. Topics and concepts are effectively learned when details of such are arranged and ordered in the context of the learner. So that is the reason why gumagamit tayo ng curriculum guide. Bakit? Kung mapapansin nyo, from elementary, from the very basic or sa basics ng arithmetic, no, hanggang sa pagtitikataas na nga grade level, ang level liwatan difficulty of the topics and concepts presented in mathematics, nagtitika, hataas, gihapon. Why? Kasi kailangan arranged. And it should be structured appropriately that best suits to the needs and interests of the child. It should suit, no? Siya ay dapat nag-fit in doon sa capabilities noong doon sa stage na meron siya. Say for example, grade 1, turuan mo agad ng calculus. Is it possible na matutunan niya yun? Of course, no. We should consider the different developmental stages and yung level ng kakayanan ng estudyante. Kaya nga, how a body of knowledge can be structured. So, kailangan, kaya sabi ni Bruner, no, yung mga topics na ituturo natin, it should be organized well. Okay? Kasi kung ituturo agad natin yung nasa abstract na level without giving the learners the chance to know the basics, then wala silang prior knowledge regarding doon sa topic, mahirap na topic na ituturo natin sa kanila. So still, yung prior knowledge is involved here in the planning of the knowledge to be presented sa mga estudyante. So simula sa prior knowledge, yung mga basics, yung experiential, yung learning by doing, then habang titika-taas ng level, titika-abstract na siya. So, pag abstract na, dapat meron na siyang prior knowledge regarding doon sa panibagong topic na ituturo sa kanila. So, structures are usually arranged from the very simple to its more complex form. So, from the very simple, doon papasok yung prior knowledge. Then to the very complex, doon natin ini-apply or ikino-connect, nire-relate yung prior knowledge sa panibagong learning. Then patterns are also based on what is recognizable or familiar to the learners than those who are very new to them. Okay, so patterns. Kaya nga, di ba, kapag may pinipresent sa atin si teacher na panibagong topic, then hindi natin siya na-recognize or hindi siya familiar, then we find it difficult to grasp the topic presented by the teacher. So that is the second major aspect to be addressed under the constructivist theory ito. Third, the most effective sequence in which to present material. So sequencing of presentation is part of a teacher's innovation in teaching. So our presentation, no, sa mga bata, it should be sequenced. Then the teacher considers which the learners need most and can understand first and can master first as a prerequisite knowledge or skill to the next topic concept. Okay. So, kailangan naka-sequenced yung not only the materials but also the topics to be presented to the learner. So, sabi pa nga dito, dapat alam natin kung ano yung prerequisite. Say, for example, in math, kapag magtuturo ka na ng polynomials, of course, dapat alam nila kung ano yung mga variables, ano yung exponents, alam nila kung ano yung fundamental operations, right? So, kailangan naka-sequenced yung mga topics and materials to be presented to the learners. From the very basic, kung saan founded ang kanilang prior knowledge, to the complex, more complex, kung saan doon na natin pinapasok yung prior knowledge. And, of course, the nature and pacing of rewards and punishments. Rewards and punishments should be properly selected, and that whenever they are given to the learners, they should know and understand why they are rewarded or punished. Of course, di ba yung pag nagbibigay tayo ng reward, hindi lang naman tayo basta-basta nagbibigay ng reward, but rather, gaya ng diniscuss natin, di ba, kay B.F. Skinner, na operant conditioning, na kapag ka merong behavior na positive at gusto natin na ma-repeat yung behavior, say for example, yung pag-study, yung pagiging honor student niya. So, para ma-repeat, so yung positive behavior niya, ma-increase or ma-strengthen, we are presenting rewards. So, bakit ka nag-present ng rewards sa kanila? Kasi nga, gusto natin na yung behavior ay ma-repeat siya. Pero kapag ka they are punished naman, ipaliwanag natin why are they punished. Okay? So, yung rewards and punishments daw ay parang crucial siya dito sa constructivist theory. So, of course, when we say punishment, ito yung pinipresent natin sa mga learners so that the negative behavior will be decreased. Okay? Or hindi na maulit to weaken the negative behavior or unpleasant behavior. Okay? So, Bruner's principle of instruction. So, the following are guide principles in giving instructions or in teaching. So, instruction must be considered with the experiences. Why? Kasi nga, di ba sinabi natin, prior knowledge, these are experiences. Okay? And context that make the student willing and able to learn. That is why, when we are presenting examples regarding a particular topic, it should be related to the learner's own experiences. Why? So that they may find the connection between their experience and the current or the new topic. So, readiness. Second, instruction must be structured so that it can be easily grasped by the student. Yun nga, sinabi natin kanina, no? Yung spiral organization, it should be organized. Yung ating materials, topics should be structured in a manner wherein systematic siya. Okay? And of course, instruction should be designed to facilitate extrapolation and or fill in the gaps. going beyond the information given. So, yun na, ina-apply niya na, no, from the very prior knowledge abstractly, then, yun na, fill in the gaps. Or, more likely, hindi lang basta sa information na binibigay, but rather, into real life experiences. Okay, so that is the end of constructivist learning theory, the first learning theory under constructive learning theories. Okay? So, punta muna tayo sa inyong module. Ayan, so we are already in chapter 5, Constructivist Learning Theories. So again please read your module. Kasi nga, there might be some instances na kung ano yung nasa PowerPoint presentation natin ay parang part lang siya noong kabuuan na dinidiscuss natin. So not necessarily all, the informations that you need are already in your module. So do not simply depend on the video recorded, provided for you, but rather please read your module. Read the following. Okay, so sa engage na part. So first is that you are to describe the 3 modes of representation, yung kanina na-discuss natin by Jerome Bruner. Make an icon that will represent the mode, each mode, then describe it. Draw your icon on the circle. So, mapapansin nyo, not necessarily circle, okay? Or oblong. Diyan. Ito-draw ninyo, magdodraw kayo ng icon or any image that will represent yung kada mode of representation. Say, for example, inactive. Kapag sinabing inactive, ito ay action-based. Now, think of an image or an icon which will represent inactive mode of representation. Then you draw that icon on this oblong or in this circular shape here. Yung tatlo. Mag-iisip kayo ng icon in each mode of representation. Then, think of 3 situations. Of course, 3 situation each pala, sorry. So, in each mode of representation, you think of tatlo where the modes are applied. So, you think of a classroom application noong mga modes of representation. So, there should be 3 classroom or learning experience kung saan itong mode of representation ay naya-apply. Say, for example, sa inactive. So, doon sa circle, magdodraw ka doon ng icon that will represent inactive. Then, in your own words, describe what is inactive representation. When we say inactive representation, what does it mean? Then, below, mapapansin nyo, meron dyan, application of the modes in teaching and learning process. So, in inactive representation, you give 3 situations wherein the mode is applied. So, that is for number 1. Number 2. What are the major aspects to be addressed, so on and so forth. So, read and explain each aspect. Then, you are to explain Bruner's principles of instruction. Then, what impact can it make to the teaching strategy of a teacher when the principles are considered? So, you answer the following questions. Then, of course, in express, you are to make reflection on the following questions. So, kindly read na lang the questions, then answer. Okay? And please be guided by the learning rubric provided. Okay? So, you will be graded based on the learning rubric here. So, yung content, yung answer ninyo sa engage, sa express, and the mechanics, of course, your grammar and spelling, and of course, the neatness. Okay, so that's it for Constructivist Learning Theory or Constructivist Theory by Jerome Bruner. Now, Again, if you have questions, just raise your questions through our group chat. But, kung too obvious na yung inyong question, alayo naman pagbasahin mga general directions kasi paulit-ulit na lang yung tanong. Hindi kayo, nahalata kayo, hindi kayo nagbabasa ng general directions. Nakuha? Okay, so thank you and God bless.